Give the gift of Rev Voice this Christmas. Rejoice with Rev Voice when you sign up and enter to win 12 days of giveaways, including a 2015 Jeep Wrangler from Bahamas Bus and Truck.
BUT President Belinda Wilson speaks out after she was suspended for 2 alleged undisclosed violations. A man shot on Kemp Street this morning takes the country's murder count up by 1. Plus, how Genting continues to transform Bimini, and the Bank of the Bahamas has a not-so-new board of directors. We've got those stories and more coming up tonight. I'm Dana Smith, and NB12 starts right now. Topping news tonight, a day after the Executive Committee of the Bahamas Union of Teachers suspended President Belinda Wilson for 6 months for 2 undisclosed alleged violations, the suspended president says she plans to appeal the decision. This as BUT executives say they do not expect that suspension to impact their relationship with Wilson. Jasmine Brown has the details in this report.
Wilson's suspension took effect yesterday at 12:04 p.m. Treasurer Lori Knowles was suspended for 4 months for similar violations. Today, Wilson spoke to the press as she mingled with BUT members at the union's annual Christmas party. Wilson would not say what those violations entailed, but insisted she did not commit a crime.
Let me state unequivocally that there was no crime committed. I reiterate, there was no crime committed.
Wilson also insisted she believed she has the support of the BUT membership, but she did say both suspensions will hinder union business.
Unfortunately, though, this suspension is a major distraction because Ms. Knowles and myself are 2 of the full-time members who run the union on a day-to-day basis. Secondly, it's even further distraction because this will negatively impact our members who we serve because we're presently at the negotiation table and Ms. Knowles and myself are members of the negotiating team and I am the lead negotiator. We've been negotiating actually for approximately 7 months and we have completed and agreed on about 90% of our agreement.
The executive committee said Wilson has a right to appeal her suspension, and they chose not to speak further about her actions until she exercised that right. Wilson confirmed she planned to do just that.
We will appeal our suspension, and we have to do that within 5 days. And then the power will be left in the hands of the membership.
Today, BUT executives elaborated on what Wilson's suspension means for the union and how the appeals process will apply. Secretary General John Musgrove explains the appeals process.
They have 5 days to send a written repeal to the executive committee through the Secretary General. Once that has happened, and then our constitution states that the Secretary General must call a membership of the meeting to elect an appeals committee within 21 days.
Musgrove says if the appeals process reaches the second phase next summer, that will be the final decision made on the matter.
Now, if the appeals committee uphold the suspension, then our constitution says that she has a further right to appeal to the annual general meeting, which happens to last week in June of every year. And once the annual general meeting, which is the supreme authority of the organization, makes its decision, it is no further appeal.
Meantime, acting President Zane Lightbourne said he doesn't feel the incident will tarnish the relationship between Wilson and other executives.
This isn't strange to the organization. We have had suspension of executive officers in the past, and I can't recall that it hindered production, productivity, or camaraderie. It just depends on each individual.
Lyburn also assured their membership that present negotiations with the government on their behalf and the normal operations of the union will not be impacted by the suspension. Lyburn says he will act in the position of president until Wilson returns.
The union continue to run as smooth as possible. We have negotiations that will continue. We are also in the process of a number of projects. Grand Bahama is one of them, the building in Grand Bahama, and we have our other projects that we're going to continue as we have been going forward.
Reporting for NB12, I'm Jasmine Brown.
Police were called to the scene of yet another murder this morning after a man was gunned down in the Kemp Road area. Head of Central Detective Unit Paul Roll said the incident occurred around 6:45. According to Roll, a 19-year-old man was standing on Kemp Road awaiting a ride to work. Roll said that's when four men approached in a Honda. Two of those men exited the car with handguns and opened fire on the victim, hitting him several times. The suspects fled the area in the car while the victim was transported to Princess Margaret Hospital by EMS, where he was pronounced dead. Police are asking anyone with information on this latest killing or any other crime, no matter how small or insignificant the tip may seem, to anonymously call police at 919 or Crime Stoppers at 328-TIPS. In other news, since the Genting Group arrived in Bimini 2 years ago, the company claims it has already pumped $500 million into the island's economy. And today, the company that brought Resorts World to Bimini officially opened another investment worth millions of dollars. Kyle Joaquin reports.
The $10 million resurfacing of the Kings Highway in Bimini is finally complete and open to the public. The Genting Group carried out the works to the road which runs through the entire northern part of Bimini and leads to the newly built Resorts World Bimini Hotel. Since the group came to Bimini 2 years ago, it's pumped $500 million into the tiny community. Genting CEO KT Lim says it was his company's goal to not just build a hotel, but transform lives in Bimini.
The island's pedestrians, bicyclists and motorists are now enjoying a smooth ride for the first time in decades since the last road was paved. It has been truly a wonderful 2 years for Bimini. Throughout these 2 years, Resorts World Bimini has demonstrated its commitment to the success of these islands.
Aside from the Kings Highway, the resort also donated 2,000 gallons of paint to the community. Genting paid for the roadworks, and over the next few years, the government will repay them in tax concessions. Christie said so far the Genting Group has lived up to its word of incorporating residents of Bimini in the project on various levels.
To place his confidence not just in the government of the Bahamas, but in the people of the Bahamas. And when you ask yourself, who are the people of the Bahamas who are directly involved in this investment, we are talking about the people of Bimini.
Christie said at some point next year, all the roads in Bimini will be fixed.
I am to inform you that 4 companies submitted proposals for the project, and Bahamas Hot Mix emerged as the winning bidder. I am aware that there are additional areas on Bimini in dire need of either surfacing for the first time or repaving. I wish to advise that the costing of those areas is underway, and we intend to tackle all of those areas in the new year.
The controller of the Road Traffic Department recently visited the island and will oversee the erection of street signs and the marking of the roads. Caribbean Civil Group Limited has been contracted to carry out a traffic monitoring study. It's through this study that it will be determined how many vehicles and what type of vehicles will be allowed on the island. Now, aside from the $500 million already pumped into this community, the Genting Group says they plan on investing even more money into the island. Reporting from Bimini for NB12, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
The Bank of the Bahamas held its annual general meeting last night, where several members of its board of directors were reappointed, despite calls by some for the executive team to resign or be fired. The move comes more than a month after government effectively bailed out the bank, establishing another company to absorb millions of dollars in bad commercial loans. The new board was listed in a news release posted on the bank's official website. Managing Director Paul McQueenie's name, however, is absent from the the new board. According to the Bank of the Bahamas, the general meeting involved a frank discussion of the bank's future, and stakeholders were asked to vote in 8 directors to the board's 2014-2015 term. 7 of the 8 directors have served on the board's prior term. Renee McKay is the only new name on the list. Managing Director Paul McQueenie's name is absent. The BOB release said McQueenie will be assisting in succession planning activities, including preparations for the bank's next managing director, and announcements on the timeline for any new leadership transitions will be made in due course. Well, Raquel Wilson, general counsel at Bank of the Bahamas, told NB12 there may be some misinformation contained in the release regarding McQueenie's post. She said the bank wants to clarify McQueenie is still BOB's managing director. She said the managing director is not required to retire his seat at the annual general meeting, as he's not up for reappointment at that time. It's only the non-executive directors who must be re-elected at the meeting. Back on October 31st, government announced it established Resolve Bahamas, a corporation that absorbed $100 million worth of BOB's troubled commercial loans. After the move, several members of the F&M called for the bank's executive management to resign or face disciplinary action, given the bank's financial situation. They questioned what's to stop the bank from gaining more bad financial loans if the same people who were in charge then are in charge now. James Smith, chairman of the board at Resolve Bahamas, told NB12 today it's up to the shareholders to decide if executives should be let go, and he noted government is the majority shareholder.
I mean, that's really something that only the shareholders can do, no matter what our opinions are. And I'm quite certain that some shareholders feel that way. However, Bank of Bahamas is a strange creature. It's 65% owned by the National Insurance Board, the Treasury, and 35%, I think, of citizens of the Bahamas. So last night, I suppose, they would have made their views known, and we'll see what happened today.
Smith named the recession and the economic slowdown as contributors to the bank's financial situation. He also noted BOB was seemingly more concentrated in the higher risk category of commercial loans. He shied away from pointing to the bank's management as a reason for the significant bad loans, explaining he's not privy to information that would either prove or disprove the idea.
I'm not really privy to what went on. That's why it's very difficult from, I'm not being in the bank. But I do know that, generally speaking, we are now running something like 20% of all loans in the Bahamas, which is more than $1 billion, are in arrears. And this is a direct result of the economic slowdown we've had over the past, since 2008. And the non-performing loans, I think in 2007, thereabouts, was more like 4%, not 20%. So it's a really tough environment out there.
Accounting firm Deloitte & Touche has been selected by government as the company that will go after the bad loans. Smith said that company will handle the heavy lifting, collecting the debt, while Resolve and its board will focus more on policy decisions.
The board of directors, which I'm chairman, would probably be more interested in the policy aspects of it. For instance, we might take the view that let's go after the low-hanging fruit, the ones that we think we can realize quickly. Or we might say, let's go after the 2 largest, which represents 40% of the total outstanding. It's decisions like that. And we would give directions to the accounting firm. Or we might see one of the loans might be capable of being resuscitated. So we might say move in as a receiver and let's see if we can work with the person who has the loan to see if we can revive the operation so they can be in a position to repay.
Some have voiced concerns about government's ability to go after the loans given its record on tax collection. When asked about this, here's what Smith had to say.
It's really not a question of confidence at this stage. The loans have already gone bad. And the question is, do you just leave it or do you try to get something out of it?
You're watching the best in Bahamian news. There's more when NB12 returns.